Hello, in this video we're going to be solving absolute value equations. First, let's talk about what absolute value is. Absolute value of a number can be considered as the distance between 0 and that number on the real number line. Okay, so if you take a look, here we have the absolute value of -3. -3 is right here on the graph, and here is 0. Absolute value of -3 is basically saying how far away is -3 from 0? Well, it's 3 units, so your answer is 3. Let's take a look at this one. 4. Here's 4 on the number line, and here is 0. The distance between the two are 4 units, so we say the absolute value is 4. Because distance is always positive, or it could be 0, then your absolute value is always going to be positive. Okay? All right, now knowing that concept, we're going to do some solving of some absolute value equations here. Now some of these are going to be pretty obvious and some of them not so much. So if we take a look at this, this says the absolute value of what number would be 8. The absolute value of what number would be 8. Hopefully in your head you're thinking, well, there's two things. X could be 8 because the absolute value of 8 is 8. But x could also be -8 because the absolute value of -8 is also 8. So this is two answers. All right, let's take a look at a few more. So let's try these right here. Okay, so I'm just going to slide this over to reveal some questions here. Let's get our pen back. And the absolute value of what number could be 9? Well, there's the absolute value of two things. X could be 9, or you could put -9 in there. Let's take a look at this next one. Absolute value of what number is 21? Well, hopefully you're saying two things. 21, but also -21. Absolute value of what number is 12? Well, hopefully you're saying absolute value of positive 12 is 12, but also the absolute value of -12. In this one right here, you've got, again, got two answers. So you would have positive 15, but also the absolute value of -15 is 15. So you have two answers here. Okay. Now they become a little bit more challenging. So now I'm adding a little bit of algebra in here. So hopefully you're looking at this and saying, okay, the absolute value of what number could be 9? Well, this right here could be 9. So what plus 1 is 9? 8. But this in here could also be -9. So what plus 1 gives you -9? So that one requires a little bit more thought, and maybe that doesn't come to your head right away. So you could do this. You could do x plus 1 equals -9 and solve it and say, oh yeah, -10. So your second answer is that x could be -10. If we look at the next one here, we say, okay, the absolute value of what number is 12? Okay, so that means this in here must be 12. So what plus 1 is 12? Well, that's 11. That's the easier part. But what plus 1 gives you -12? Because remember, the absolute value of -12 is also 12. So what plus 1 is -12? Well, again, if you can't think of it, you could set up an equation right here and just solve it. And once you see that you're minusing the 1, you go, oh yeah, it's -13. So x would be -13. Let's try this again. What plus 1, take the absolute value of it, gets 16. So that means this could be 16. So what plus 1 is 16? That's the easier part. That's going to be 15. But now this could also be -16. So what plus 1 gives you -16? What plus 1 gives you -16? So hopefully you're thinking in your head, -17. So you'll notice these have two answers. Now let's take a look at this last one here. The absolute value of what gives you -11? Wait a minute. the absolute value of a number is negative 11. Can you have the absolute value of a number be negative? Actually, no, you can't. This is an example of a no solution, and you have to be really careful about these because they can sneak in anywhere. Sometimes something might look right, but it actually isn't. So it is possible these come out to be no solution. Okay, so let me show you how to deal with these algebraically. Essentially what you're going to do is you're going to isolate your absolute value. So if I look at this problem, okay, on the left side of the equation, the absolute value is all by itself. That's what I want. So essentially what we have here is the absolute value of an expression is equal to 5. So that means this expression could be equal to two things. The expression could be 5, or the expression could actually be negative 5. It could be either one of those. So what does it mean for us? And how do I solve this? Well, this is what we do. We say, okay, this expression in here could be equal to 5. So we say x minus 2 could be 5. But this x minus 2 could also equal negative 5. And now this is what we solve. So x is equal to 7. There's your first number. And add 2 to both sides. And x could be negative 3. So there are your two answers, 7 and negative 3. Let's try this again. Okay, so the first thing that we need to do is we need to isolate the absolute value. So this needs to be all by itself. So what that means is we're going to have to add 5 to both sides. And we have the absolute value of 2x minus 7 equals 9. Okay, so what that basically says is the absolute value of something is 9. Well, this something could be two things. That something could be 9, or that something could be negative 9. So here's what we do. We are going to say this expression right here, this expression, so the 2x minus 7 could be 9, because if that equaled 9, this statement would be true. But we also say that 2x minus 7 could be negative 9, because the absolute value of negative 9 is also positive 9. These are the two equations that we solve. So I'm just going to solve these just like normal. So 2x is 16, which means x must be 8. So 8 will make this true. Now let's solve this one. We'll add 7 to both sides, and we get 2x is equal to negative 2, which means x is equal to negative 1. So my two answers are 8 and negative 1. And if I were to check that, let's check the 8 first. So 2 times 8 minus 7. Okay, so now I have this written down here. Sorry, my pen was going a little crazy. So that gives us the absolute value of 16 minus 7 minus 5 is equal to 4. So 16 minus 7, so the absolute value of 9 minus 5 is equal to 4. The absolute value of 9 is, what did I do wrong here? Oh, nothing's wrong. Nothing's wrong. For whatever reason, it looked a little funny to me. So we end up with 9 minus 5 is 4, and that is true. And we could do the same thing with our other answer. So the absolute value of 2 times negative 1 minus 7, and then we've got minus 5, hopefully is equal to 4. So negative 2 minus 7, absolute value of that, minus 4 is equal to 4. So absolute value of negative 9 minus 5 is 4. Yep, 9 minus 5 is 4. We're good. It works. Let's try another one. Okay, your first step your first step is to get this absolute value all by itself. There's a lot of work involved in this. Okay, so to get this all by itself, we have to get rid of the plus 1. We also have to get rid of the 5. Now, if you wanted to get rid of the 5, be very careful. A lot of kids want to try and distribute this. Absolute value is not the same thing as parentheses. They are not. No distributing here. What you're going to have to do is to get rid of this 5, you're going to have to divide everything by 5. Now myself personally, I'd get rid of the 1 first. So I have 5 times the absolute value of x minus 3 is equal to negative 80. Now I'm going to divide both sides by 5. This is how I get rid of my 5. I do not distribute. And now I have the absolute value of x minus 3 is equal to negative 16. Wait a minute, hold on here. Can the absolute value of a number be negative? Hopefully you're saying no. This is a trick. There's no solution. This cannot happen. There is no solution to this equation. So actually we're done. Nothing more to do on this. Let's try one more. All right. So your steps are, we need to get this absolute value all by itself on one side of the equation. So that means we need to get rid of the 2 and we need to get rid of the 4. I'm going to get rid of the 4 first. And I get 2 times the absolute value of 2x minus 3 is equal to 4. Now I can divide both sides by 2, and I get the absolute value of 2x minus 3 is equal to 2. So what this says is the absolute value of something is equal to 2. So we need to know what that something, what can that expression equal? Well, if the expression was 2, the statement's true. If the expression is negative 2, then the statement is also true. So basically what we have here is we are going to take this expression right here and we're going to say 2x minus 3 could be equal to positive 2. Or this expression in here could be equal to negative 2. It could be either one. These are what you actually solve. So we're going to add 3 to both sides. We get 2x is equal to 5, which means, and that's totally fine, I know you're probably wondering what's going on there, but it can be 5. Divide both sides by 2, and x is equal to 2.5. Perfectly fine. Let's add 3 to both sides. So I get 2x is equal to 1. Divide both sides by 2, and I get x is equal to 1/2 or 0.5, however you want to write it, and those are your two answers. So, quick summary. Oh, we've got one more question, and then we'll do a quick summary. So you may want to pause the video. Let's see if you understand what's wrong here. So if you want, pause the video and just verbally or in your head try and describe and correct the error in solving the equation. So here we have 2 examples where somebody has solved both of them. I'd like you to find the error and correct it. So you can go ahead and pause the video right now to see if you can figure out what's wrong. Okay, so if you've unpaused the video, now we're going to look at the first one. Now just starting right off in the first one, this says the absolute value of something is equal to -9. Well, we know the absolute value of a number is the distance from 0, and that's not going to be negative. You can't do any of this work. This is a no solution. I'm hoping you were able to pick up on that. Now in this one, at first glance, I didn't see anything wrong with it. And then I went back to check it. And I went, all right, if I check this as an answer, say 5 times -2, So the absolute value of 5 times negative 2 plus 8 equals negative 2. And I went, oh, wait a minute. The absolute value of this cannot come out to be negative 2. If I were to finish this, the absolute value of negative 10 plus 8 is equal to negative 2. So this would be the absolute value of negative 2 is equal to negative 2. That's not true. That's not true. And I'm looking at the second one right here, and I'm sensing that it's the exact same situation, because if I were to plug this in, I get the absolute value of 5 times negative 4/3 plus 8 equals negative 4/3. Well, whatever this comes out to be, the absolute value is not going to turn out to be a negative. So this again is also wrong, because if these two answers right here came out to be positive, it would be fine. But because those two answers came out to be negative, and the absolute value of whatever this is cannot be negative, this is actually a no solution as well. Okay, now let's do our quick summary. So the things that I want you to make sure you know: number one, I would like you to isolate your absolute value. Okay, that's the first thing. So when you're solving an equation, get the absolute value all alone. So it's got to be the absolute value of something equals some number. Okay, so the absolute value of something equals some number. Now, second thing you're going to do, set the expression in the absolute value equal to the positive and negative of the value on the other side of the equation. And then you're going to solve both of those. And just be careful that it could come out to be a no solution. So for example, if I gave you 2 times the absolute value of x plus 1 equals 7, first thing you're going to do is isolate that absolute value. So that means you're going to have to get rid of the 2, and you have the absolute value of x plus 1 is equal to 3.5. Now you're going to set the expression in the absolute value equal to the positive and negative value on the other side of the equation. So basically we're going to say, okay, this expression right here could be positive 3.5. But this expression right here could also be negative 3.5. And these are what you're going to solve. Okay? So isolate the absolute value, set the expression equal to the positive as well as the negative version of what's on the other side, and solve both of those. Just be careful that if this is negative right here, and I'm highlighting it, then you would have no solution. So just be careful about that. All right, you have practice questions to do today. So I wish you all the best of luck on that. If you're having any difficulty, please contact me. Good luck, everyone.